Say you start with two options, existence and non-existence. And then you realize that you need to start with motionlessness because existence cannot start in a state of relative motion, because then you have the paradox of infinite regress. Just try it yourself and you will see that I am right, and your non-existence cannot start in a state of motion, because then it would exist and not be non-existing, which is obvious. As long as you have spacetime, you can slice it up endlessly in your mind and never reach a starting position. So you start with a notion of motionlessness because if nothing has ever moved, you have no apparent manifestation of spacetime, so you bypass the whole problem of infinite regress. At this stage, you do not know what motionlessness is. It's just an idea. But you realize that, whatever motionlessness is or is not, there can only be one kind of it, because there can be many ways of moving, but only one way of not moving. If there is more than one type of motionlessness, my hypothesis falls apart. That is, you establish that there is only one type no matter what. This will be decisive. Now you begin to find out what motionlessness is. When you think about it, motionlessness is the same as timelessness. You can start easily. You can start with not anything. This motionlessness is motionless because it does not exist. However, this non-existence has a fatal flaw: it is only an idea. You can't know if your idea is fruitful, because for all you know, your non-existence could be as illogical as the invisible pink unicorn. So you keep looking for alternative ways motionlessness can be, and the rule is, if you find one type of motionlessness which is logically consistent, whatever it is, it will logically rule out all others, because there can only be one motionlessness. This logically consistent motionlessness can be your not anything, but then you have to show that it is logically consistent. It must be sensible in any case. So if you find a motionlessness in nature, that is, a motionlessness that is more than an idea, then your idea of not anything will be completely shattered if, and only if, there is only one type of motionlessness. That's when I saw it. I sat on a beam of light in my mind and there I saw it, motionlessness. Because it was the beam of light that took me to motionlessness, I understood that only motion can generate motionlessness, and thus this equation answers why there is existence instead of non-existence. The fastest possible speed equals motionlessness. This is true if there can be only one kind of motionlessness, for if you want non-existence that does not move, it must be motionless, but if the motionlessness belongs to existence, then you cannot create an idea of non-existence which is meaningful. Non-existence is impossible. Imagine that you can actually establish that non-existence is impossible, then you have in some ways answered why existence exists. I learned that the geometry built for this ultimate movement is called the cuboctahedron. This means that the cuboctahedron can never die because you need motionlessness. It is self-generated and eternal. Test the self-generation yourself. If you have a cereal consisting of, for example, chocolate balls and you pour milk into your cereal, you will see that in this two-dimensional world, as it were, the kissing number is 6. That is, nature automatically arranges itself into a hexagram. In 3D, we get a cuboctahedron, which is the geometry of the timelessness that created our universe. That is, all nature wants is to be this system. Timelessness does not exist beyond our universe, but within it, right before your eyes. This could be dark matter, but more on that another time. Let's go back to our concept of not anything and take it apart. You say, if motion is like drawing figures on a piece of paper and motionlessness is like holding the pencil completely still, then my definition of non-existence is to remove the figures, pencil, paper, and all. Absolutely not anything. That is, what about a notion of non-existence that is somehow beyond motion and motionlessness? You are motionless because you do not exist is different from existing and not moving. My answer: we humans cannot conceptualize it. What does it mean to not exist? We have no example to show. The best example we have is a magic trick, such as making a coin disappear. However, we all know that no conservation law was broken. It was just a trick. So, with no example to point to, how can philosophers say that non-existence is not anything when we have no example of it? That is, how can not anything make sense? We cannot use nonsense and fantasy to create our definition of non-existence. The best definition of non-existence is a state of motionlessness, but then nature shows us that even motionlessness belongs to the existence, which means that non-existence is impossible. If you really want your concept of not anything, you must first answer the following questions. Energy is conserved, so what would happen if an object suddenly popped out of existence? Will a magical hole form into which all things will be sucked? Will the universe be torn apart? Will magical unicorns jump up from the hole? No one knows the answer because we cannot see beyond the limits of our logical system. If we could, we would see that any definition of non-existence is meaningless because nature solved the problem of infinite regress with motionlessness. That is to say, nature spins so fast that she has become timeless, and in timelessness, one cannot form paradoxes such as infinite regress because you don't have any kind of earthly time to form the paradox with. Further, not anything cannot be defined logically because one cannot use logic to explain what would have happened if the law of conservation was broken. You say, if one thing suddenly jumped out of existence, it would be one less thing to worry about. Nevertheless, you might as well say, if something suddenly popped out of existence, the sun would turn into cheese. You simply cannot know what will happen or if it is even possible. Back to the puzzle, how can the cuboctahedron, which is motionless, be in motion at the same time because we have normal movement too? As the light showed us, you need a very high speed to achieve motionlessness, which means you need a giant vortex with a large body to achieve such a high speed. I think these are black holes. The big body can then be seen as spacetime because not everything in the big body or spin will move as fast as the core of the vortex due to the big body being so big and therefore needing more time to rotate. That is, it is only in the core of the vortex that the spin spins so fast that we achieve motionlessness, which is the same as timelessness, which is a state without spacetime. And nature must start from a state of timelessness, otherwise, we have the paradox of infinite regress. And because matter can return to this paradox-free state at the center of the cosmic vortex, it, matter, can be free of information and entropy and thus be resurrected or recycled. That is, having eternal entropy would be an infinite paradox because you can always ask where it came from. You have to destroy entropy completely because then you can't ask where it came from because then you don't have it. That is, the relative boundaries must be destroyed, but the absolute, the boundless, will remain. Asking where the absolute came from is not an infinite paradox because timelessness has no space or time manifested in it, so it has no location on the map, so to speak, so you cannot ask the question. It's when you have a location on the map that the infinite regress paradox appears, so to speak. Absolute, the boundless, is a state where you are no longer relative or have any boundaries. When relative spacetime is destroyed, it is transformed into the absolute. When you think about it, from the point of view of the absolute, there is only nothingness because, in timelessness, no time has passed, so there has been no time to manifest anything, therefore no object has manifested in this state. It's really a big nothingness, but it exists, as a high speed, and that's the key. I believe that this is real nothingness. We're looking at the real deal here. And lastly, how did the center, the core of the vortex, which is timeless, cause the large vortex body to move? And when did this happen? Here you separate the core of the vortex from the outer body of the vortex, but they are the same, one wholesome vortex, and therefore one does not need causality, that is, the core does not need to cause anything. Timelessness is a state of being. If you can explain how and why this condition exists and why it must exist, then you don't need to cause it to move. It's always been spinning, but it's spinning so fast it's timeless, and that changes everything. If you are timeless, you don't need to start spinning because you are motionless. But motionlessness equals motion. Do you see it now? You need to change your point of view. When did the slower moving part, the large body, first appear in space and time, or is space and time? That one is hard. But I think one needs to be replaced with where. Where in the cosmic vortex did relative spacetime first appear? I think this is a technical question that can be answered by the scientists of the future. So, the light tells you how it all began. It all started with the way light sees reality. If you sit on a ray of light in your mind, you will see the beginning of time. Thanks for watching. And stay connected for part 2.